Lance.
Yeah, well, good morning, everybody. On this rainy morning, initially I was scheduled to be camping today and the latter part of this week, and thank goodness I came home. Camping in a big mud puddle is not a lot of fun. But anyway, here I am, and here we are to talk about book banning. Unless you've been living in a cave, I'm sure book banning and concerns about book banning are front of mind for all of us. It's something that is occurring nationally. A lot of it is part of an organized effort. There are some big national groups that are working on putting together lists of books that they're recommending to be banned or pulled out of libraries. The primary focus has been on school libraries and the classroom, but public libraries are also under the microscope. And so unfortunately, we all find ourselves on the front line of a culture war. Why is this happening, you might ask? I mean, I don't profess to be any sort of expert or anything, but it's my impression and my own opinion that a lot of this is being done for political reasons. It's being done as a means to energize a base to get people to come out and vote for midterms, and then in 2024 come out and vote for the general election. And so basically the allegations are that we are trying to groom kids because we have items that cover LGBTQIA topics. We have items that cover, that feature people of color. And so they feel like we're pushing this sort of quote unquote woke agenda. I'm here to tell you that, pardon my French, that's bullshit. We have not pushed anything agenda. We're not doing anything different than we've ever done. Yes, we're doing EDI work, but we're doing EDI work because we want to make sure we're impacting every community that's in the county. And there are a lot of different segments of the population, and there's a lot of different segments of the population where we are not really having an impact. And so we've been undertaking our EDI efforts to have a greater impact in those areas. And quite often, a lot of those segments are composed of people that need more help. So, I'm happy that we're doing that work, but we haven't changed our philosophy around collection development really. Our collection, what we try to do is match it demographically to the area, and also it's a popular materials collection. So if something is not circulating, it comes off the shelf and it goes to a place where it will be circulating. And if it doesn't circulate at all, KDL does a pretty good job of getting it off the shelf altogether. So if people are finding books on the shelf, presumably the reason why they're finding them on your library shelf is because somebody else has checked them out and there's some community interest in that item. So that's where it's coming from. So what are we protecting here specifically? Well, accessing information is actually freedom to access information is actually something that is covered under the First Amendment. So if you have any questions as to what law we're protecting here specifically, and we're talking about censorship and book banning, we're really protecting people's First Amendment rights. We value the entire Constitution, and we certainly value intellectual freedom in the First Amendment. And long story short, we will never pull an item off the shelf if it is protected by the Constitution. And I'm going to do a spoiler alert here. Everything that's in our collection is protected by the Constitution. We don't collect pornography. Although, strangely enough, I've had municipal officials ask me if we're going to get Hustler recently, and I thought that was a crazy thing to ask. And next time somebody asks me that, I'm going to ask them if they want to fill a form out, a request for, a book request, if you will, and we'll get their name down on the form. I doubt if they'll do that though. But anyway, so let's bring this all back down to the frontline staff, because this is really where kind of the first contact is made, generally speaking. Yes, it happens on social media. And yes, this is actually a lot larger than book bans in particular. I mean, we get challenges for programs that we've had. I've had challenges for reading lists. I've been told that I'm a terrible parent. I'm going to go to hell for sure. And I've been reamed out by people on the phone because we have LGBTQIA reading lists for teens. We get challenges for displays. We get challenges for everything. But today we're going to really talk mostly about book challenges. Although I will say that the methodology that we're going to be talking about today really can apply across the board. And one of the things that I really would like to do is really make sure that we're doing, filling out incident reports and forms for everything that happens. I'm an attorney, and having a good evidentiary trail is really necessary and critical, particularly if we ever find ourselves in court. So if you're on the front line and you're at the desk and somebody comes up and like, this book, genderqueer is a piece of trash, I demand that you ban it. Couple of things I want everyone to do right out of the gate. One, don't defend the item. Two, even though it's very difficult sometimes, don't argue with them. Don't engage them, just give them an empathetic ear. Just be empathetic in the moment. And three, hand them a form. The form is where it's at. So what we want everyone to do is to say, I understand your concerns with the item. Have you read the item? We recommend that you read the item and please fill out this form, this request for, reconsideration or request banning form. I can't remember the terminology off the top of my head. I haven't had enough coffee yet this morning. But give them a form and don't engage further. Just give them the form, have them fill out the form. They can send it, give it back to you or turn it into the manager, whatever. Have them fill out a form. If you get somebody who's complaining about a display, I'm of the opinion we should fill out a form for a display or a program, or everything should have, some sort of paper trail that the person's participated, that the person's read the item. We can't require that they read the item because there's no way for us to actually police that in any sort of meaningful way, but we want to strongly recommend that they read the item. And the reason we want them to fill out forms is because occasionally we'll get lists of like 20 items and people will say, I want this list of 20 books banned. We want them to fill out a form for every one of those books, and we want them to have read every one of those books. We're not requiring that they read every one of those books, but they do need to fill out a separate form for every one of those books. Now, I'm going to tell you, we get probably 1 to 2 requests for banning a week, but formal bans, we've only had, I think, 14 this year. Because generally speaking, when you ask me to do one additional step, you're going to lose most of the people. And we want to make sure they're serious about, their request. So having them fill out the form is a very low bar, and that's what we're going to do. So remember, don't defend the item, empathetic ear, have them fill out a form. You might have issues where you have a group of people that approach, handle them one at a time. And I think maybe the most important thing I can tell you is this, and I want you to tell this to your staff. Our expectation is that everybody is going to try their best. We know people are going to screw things up. We have your back, and there's no expectation that we have somebody at the desk getting abused. If somebody is being abusive and is using abusive language and hurling profanities at our employee, there's nothing wrong with saying, this conversation's over, please fill out the form, and just walking away from the person, just saying, we're done here, thank you, have a nice day, this is it. There's no, and if the person won't leave, get the RM, get the regional manager, or 1 or 2, call the police, whatever. I mean, end the conversation if they're going to be abusive. There's no expectation that anybody here that works at KDL needs to stand there and be pummeled over a title. That's ridiculous. We'll just have them fill out the form. So at the end of the day, I mean, the only argument that, like I said before, that there is a constitutional argument, but let me make the argument. And I don't know if all of you know what the process is when somebody fills out a form, but what happens is it comes to collection development. Collection development reviews all the reviews of the item and does kind of a search, and it looks up all the reviews, and then collection development will make a recommendation to me. They'll send the recommendation over to my office. I'll kind of go through the rinse and repeat, read what they wrote, check the reviews myself, and determine the constitutionality of the item. If the item is protected by the Constitution, and there's only 2 types of language that aren't, that's obscenity and child pornography, they're both defined in the federal code. I'll do a kind of a constitutional check. If I have questions, I would forward it on to our attorney. If it's protected by the Constitution, we're not going to pull it out of the collection. Not happening. Because if we did that, we'd be breaking the law, and we'd be infringing on people's constitutional rights, And since we're not in the business of breaking a law at KDL and we support intellectual freedom and respect the Constitution, we're going to stand pat. And that's how it's going to go. There's a lot of different moving pieces to this, though. There's like I said, there's these national groups like Moms for Liberty. I think they have a local chapter. There's a lot of anger around this, and at the end, it's kind of heartbreaking because I do know for a fact that a lot of these labels end up sticking when they've been they put out there, for political reasons. Kind of like if you look at gun sales, for instance. Every time a Democrat is elected to a leadership position, either at the state level or at the national level, gun sales go crazy because there's this sort of irrational fear that somehow, some way, if Democrats get elected, they're going to come round up all of the guns. Not happening. I own guns. I hunt and go into the woods and stuff, and no one's ever come to my house asking for my guns. But it's that whole label got stuck on the Democratic Party for political reasons to generate enthusiasm among the electorate to come out and vote. And this is no different than that. And that whole thing about guns has been around for 20 plus years since they introduced it. And this whole thing around, us pushing an agenda will be around for a long time too. I don't think that we're going to see an end to the escalation of book banning requests until after the general election in 2024, and maybe even longer than that. And this has become really part of a party platform among a lot of municipal people that are seeking municipal office. If you look at what they're writing, they're talking about parental rights and keeping CRT out of school, critical race theory, and claiming that there's this like pushing of an agenda. Um, and it's all kind of a bunch of malarkey because they don't even teach critical race theory in Michigan schools. And like I've told several people, we're not doing anything different than we've ever done. Society has changed, not us. But our dedication to protecting the Constitution's never diminished, and we will fight to the very end, and I will die on that hill. I've been doing this type of training all across the country. I've talked to several hundred library people, and I think that the best thing we can do is practice. I would encourage all of you to do role playing in the moment and to kind of get used to this interaction as much as you can. If you go through it a couple of times when it happens to you, it won't be quite as jarring as it would be otherwise. But again, all you're going to do is you're going to hear them out. You're not going to argue about the item. You're not going to defend the item. You're going to say, all right, well, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Here's the form. Give them the form, instruct them to fill it out, request that, make sure, ask them if they've read the book, and if they haven't, ask them to please read the book. We recommend you read the book before you fill out the form. And then you're pretty much done. If they get abusive, bail. That you're not responsible for, getting beat up by a patron at the desk verbally or physically, heaven forbid. But we have your back no matter what. Even if you if somebody shanks this whole thing and does everything opposite of what I just said, it's okay. I understand. Tense moments. People sometimes do stuff that's a little crazy in tense moments. I get it. We're all human beings. We got your back. We love everybody. We're going to get through this together, and we're going to fight this fight as long as there's a fight to fight. I have a couple of questions here that were submitted, and then I'm happy to answer your questions as well. So the first question is what is our policy for book challenges that are brought up on social media? Okay, so very quickly, there was a communications bulletin that was published in July. There's a link to it. I don't know, Trish, were you ever able to track down that link?
I just put it in the chat.
Perfect. I'm going to read it to you very quickly. So communications bulletin, social media best practices for online comments. The audience was KDL All. It came out July 13th, 2022. Quick takeaways: our employees have the same rights to free speech as other citizens for posting on and from their personal, here's the thing, personal social media accounts while on their personal time, not at work. Employees are expected at all times to conduct themselves in a positive manner, which promotes the best interest of KDL. And if someone posts a comment that is contrary or critical on any KDL social media pages, it's likely that a loyal patron will chime in to defend us. So the details and what staff need to know. While commenting online about KDL, staff are expected to comply with the policies and procedures as outlined in the employee handbook and related legislation such as the Freedom of Information Protection and the Michigan Library Privacy Act. KDL enjoys a phenomenally successful social media presence. That's due to our outstanding social media work group and branch champions. The number of negative controversial posts is very, very small when you consider how much positive engagement we enjoy. When something of concern is posted, please let anyone on the social media work group, the digital marketing strategist Josh Mosey, or the director of engagement Randy Goebel know about it. We appreciate the many eyes and ears watching out for KDL's reputation. Whenever a KDL post attracts negative, provocative, or otherwise less than awesome comments, we never delete or mute the comments because it's the same as censorship. The only exception would be if the comment is threatening, profane, discriminatory, or racist, or spam. We consider responding to comments only when the question is asked of KDL. Even then, we don't have to respond. If a question is rhetorical, sarcastic, or absurd, it may not deserve a response. Whenever a response to comment is considered, we should assume that it will prompt a counter response that will increase the size of the audience and extend popularity of all comments. The best practice is to simply let it go. Social media posts have a lifespan of 1 hot minute, then fade away. It's best not to fan any sparks. If someone posts a comment that's contrary or critical of KDL, it's likely that a loyal patron will chime in to defend KDL. Most KDL patrons love KDL, and they can handle the snarky, controversial comments. So if you have any questions, please direct them to Josh Mosey or Randy Goebel. The second question that I was given is what, if anything, can be done to keep the board filled with actual library supporters and not members who'd prefer to drive the organization into the ground, as has happened at other libraries. Example, Exhibit A, Jamestown. So the issue, this is a real issue. Normally we get, if any, we get maybe 1 or 2 applicants for a board, upcoming board vacancy. So I know for East Grand Rapids, there are 25 applicants plus the incumbent for the board vacancy. So we're seeing a huge, enormous uptick in the number of applicants for board vacancies. Now, I can be a little bit paranoid at times, and this is one of those times. I'm thinking that the reason why we're seeing so many more applicants is that there are a lot of people that have, we might feel that they're illegitimate concerns because we're not doing anything different and we know our business, but they feel very considerate, very legitimate concerns about us pushing an agenda. Might want to get on the board, might be pushing for book bans. So the way it works is we have 2 board vacancies every year on a rolling basis. We have 8 board seats. So what we do is we try to identify people in the community that we feel would be good board members. They don't need to support me. What they need to support is the Constitution and the mission of the institution. End of story. And we encourage them to apply. Back in the good old days, the county commission used to take our recommendations into consideration and gave them a lot of weight. But the county commission's kind of made a really hard right, and they don't do that anymore. So I actually have had county commissioners call me up and complain about our board members that they appointed to the board, that our board members are too liberal. So all we can do is drive people toward the application process, instruct them to get letters of recommendation, and hope and pray that they get put on the board. In the event that we have a couple of rogue board members that are requesting or requiring me to mandate that we pull items off the shelf, I want you all to know that I plan on being fired that day because I will not pull anything off the shelf. I will not break the law. I will support intellectual freedom or I will die on the hill. And that's all there is to it. And I feel that strongly about it. And I feel like any inch that we give up now is an inch gone. And it's a tremendous disservice to everybody in our community and to generations to come to give an inch in this fight. So my plan is to die on the hill. On the upside, so if things went really poorly, we could end up with 2 hyper radical board members next year and then 2 more the next year. So 2 more in 2024 at the end of 2024. Which is a little iffy because that's half the board. And once you get half the board, then crazy stuff can start happening. Hopefully this thing has kind of lost some of its fire by then. But at the end of the day, we'll do our best to try to drive people that we feel are supportive of the Constitution and supportive of the institution and, kind of the idea of libraries to those positions, and then hope for the best. And, I call people, we try to influence as much as we can. But, in the last couple of years, as things have gotten more crazy on both sides of the aisle, our ability to do that's been much diminished. So there you go. What constitutional rights are we protecting specifically? We are protecting the right to access information under the First Amendment. It is one of the rights that hangs off the First Amendment. There's a federal case, it's the Hill case, and I think it involves a bookstore, and essentially what the court said is that it's a violation of the Constitution to require every book in the store to be okay and age appropriate for the youngest children to read. That there's no intent to make every library, every bookstore kind of a young children's, location. It needs to serve all of society, and that people have a constitutional right to freely access information. I did a terrible job of summarizing that case, but it's the Hill case and it's the First Amendment, and that's the law that we're talking about here. Are we monitoring for books that may have been stealth removed from the collection by patrons who check them out and quote unquote lose them, i.e. monitored through lost, missing, paid collection list or something else? The short answer is no, we don't do that, but we do pay attention to trends. At KDL, we give everybody the benefit of the doubt. We're going to assume that people aren't stealing things to be nasty. But if we see a title that keeps coming up missing, we'd start tracking that. So we kind of look for patterns, and that's the best we can do. Otherwise, it would require us to be psychic and read minds. We just can't do it. So we just stay on top of it as much as we can through the missing, lost, and so on and so forth. And we start noticing a pattern, then, we'll make changes to try to remedy the issue as much as we can. All right. The fifth question is, do we have talking points or a place on the website to send and educate people that are concerned about the topic of the month that they want addressed, i.e. a policy page to mail or refer to an educationally focused web address, especially for the Patron Services Department, and not just book challenges, but program questions, displays, so on and so forth? The answer is yes. It's at https://kdl.org/about/policies/. And it says, please note that a new web page is being created by the collection development that will share the KDL collection development philosophy and include, links to helpful things like how to suggest new materials, request for reconsideration, and so on and so forth. So those are the answers to the questions that you submitted. I'm happy to take any other questions that you have. And again, I just want to circle back and let you know that my preference is that we fill out forms and do paperwork on every challenge for everything that we get. And that submit that paperwork, because I like to have paper trails, because you never know when you're gonna end up in court. So with that, I turn over the floor to you. Let them rip. Let me know what you got.
So Lance, there is one more question that was submitted. That is it possible that at least some patrons for challenging materials could be mollified if KDL makes sure there is a good balance of materials included in the collection, and maybe that balance already exists? Can you speak to that for a little bit?
Oh my goodness gracious. I'm so glad that somebody asked this question. I'm going to tell you, your ship has arrived. The balance already exists. Again, all we're trying to do is mirror the demographics of the areas that we serve, and the way the collection development policy and the collection, when what's on the shelf exists at KDL, the whole process and all procedures designed to have the collection reflect community interest. So if something, as I said before, if something's not circulating, it's not going to stay on the shelf. It's going to go somewhere else. And if it's not circulating at all, it's going to come off completely. So we try to track as close as we can to demographic data of the area. I will say that that's not always possible. There just aren't enough materials. For instance, I know that, you can kind of consider, and these are just my numbers, you have to look up the exact number. In Kent County, 1 to 3% of people in Kent County are LGBTQIA. if you were to look at our children's collection of LGBTQIA materials, it's, I think it's under 1%. And that's just, it is what it is. If we get more requests for that, we're going to try to build the collection more, but I mean, there's just not that much stuff out there. So we try to track, and we have all kinds of stuff from conservative authors, and we have stuff from liberal authors. In fact, actually, Brian Postumus, state representative, is a friend, and I went to his office to talk to him about the legislation that we got passed, the school legislation that got more funding for school media centers. And he said that he had a complaint about KDL, that one of his constituents called in about the book A is for Activism. And he said, it looks like you guys are, pushing an agenda. And I thought that for a minute, but then I checked your catalog myself and I noticed that you have several titles by very conservative authors for kids available too. So it was pretty clear to me that you represent everybody. So the collection, in our opinion, is balanced. If you were to talk to somebody who's extreme on the left or extreme on the right, they might disagree. But in our opinion, our collection is balanced. It is something we constantly work on, and will constantly work on. So what other questions do people have?
Feel free to put things in the chat or raise your hand or just unmute and start asking. Bueller.
I always kind of feel a little bit like I'm either working at a Wendy's drive-in or landing the space shuttle whenever I put this headset on. I'm going to tell you, it's kind of weird. I don't know. It just, something about headsets. I kind of feel like a little retro punky with this thing on a little bit, but
I will say this, I will add to Lance your balance collection question is that I think in our challenge materials training, it is recommended, or one thing we try and do with patrons who are complaining about having found a book they don't like in the collection is to steer them towards something that they would like. So if we can deflect, that's always a good idea. Redirect and deflect to if they're not that upset, but if they won't be deterred, then the form and capture that information is definitely the way to go. Joanne, your hand is up. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm just going to turn off that raised hand. Trying to. Okay. So thank you, Lance, for providing this training. I appreciate it so much, and it's been helpful to me to hear some of the steps that we can take as well as these challenges are brought forth. But I went to the most recent listening and learning session, and one of the things that struck me as I was leaving was that a lot of our frontline staff are just concerned about not just the book challenges, but challenges that can come for displays or for posters or for programs. Even if the programs aren't ones that we're providing, there's a sense that we could provide it. And I was wondering if we could update the challenge form to include a display or a program that people are concerned about. So it's not just a book.
I think it's critical, and I definitely want to do that. I
Okay.
said before, I want to do whatever we can do to have a robust paper trail.
Yep, absolutely.
And I really think there's something to requesting someone to take an additional step. I'm a fisherman. I know it comes as a shock to everybody who works at KDL. Lance, you? Yeah, me. And so one of the things that's true about fishing is if you go to the river and you're willing to walk 100 yards, you're going to lose 70% of the crowd. And if you're willing to walk half a mile, you're going to lose 95% of the crowd. And if you're willing to walk a mile, you're going to lose 100% of the crowd. You're going to be by yourself, which is ideal. And the reason is that water, electricity, and people flow along the path of least resistance. And every time you put up any sort of additional step for people to do, you're going to lose people. So by requiring them to fill out a form, we're requesting that they take the time to perform a mental process to articulate what it is precisely they don't like. And I think that it makes it a lot more meaningful for them. It makes it way more meaningful for us. And if we have their thoughts in writing, I think we're better positioned to respond. So I like it. And it also takes the heat off of people at the front desk. You know, it's like, here's form, fill it out. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Turn it in. I'll run it up the flagpole, right? So no, I absolutely agree 110%, Joyanne. I think that that's critical and we should get right on it.
I think that will help too. Thank you.
Yep. You guys like my zip up fleecy thing here? Got it at the all staff. Liking it a lot today. Like sporting that KDL wear. The online store is going to go live pretty soon. And there's a hat with a cat and a book, and I'm going to get one.
Kevin Cameron just says he doesn't currently have questions. The process for how to respond feels clear. Personally, though, on the bookmobile, I have not ever been questioned about a title. That's good to know.
That's awesome. Good on you, dude.
Anyone else? Hands up. Put it in the chat. I will also say you know where to find Lance via email should a question pop up. Or other thoughts about this. Next steps for this is this is the last team session. I will get a recording out to everybody and I will take one of the recordings and make it part of the annual challenge materials training that the whole system will go through every year in January, because I consider that compliance training for our organization.
Yeah, and I want to add, I would really prefer that everybody who works at KDL practice this. Let's do some role playing in the morning, whatever, whenever you get a moment. Do some role playing, put yourself in this position, talk your way through it, do it a couple of times. I mean, if you've done this a little bit, you're gonna be more comfortable in the moment. It's still gonna be uncomfortable, but it'll be more comfortable if you've kind of practiced a little bit. So please do that.
We can work that into the training module, Lance. I can do that. Look at how we go. All right.
Today's Friday payday. This is my Friday payday dance.
In the absence of other questions, Lance, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to do these 3 sessions. I know you're a busy person, but we appreciate your leadership and your stance on intellectual freedom. I don't think we really want to see you get fired over it, so let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, me neither. But I'll tell you this, if I get fired because I didn't ban books, they are never going to get a director here that's worth, pardon my French, 2 shits to come in, who's going to come into an environment where book banning is the name of the game. Book banning does not belong in libraries. Just doesn't. It's, it's like fried chicken at a vegetarian convention, a vegan convention, it just doesn't belong there. It's not it. Yeah, it's food, but it doesn't belong there. Book banning doesn't belong in libraries either. We are, the public house and, the marketplace of ideas. So anyway, yeah, it's my pleasure. And I love all of you guys. And I know this sucks, but we're going to get through it together. We got your back. No matter what you do, you can't screw this up because we got your back no matter what. Although if you karate chop somebody in the windpipe, that might be an issue. Just going to say that, go on record. Anyway, thank you all for everything you do. Yeah, that's the line. Karate chop windpipe. You guys take care.
All right. With that, thank you everybody for taking time out this morning. Have a great rest of your Friday and a fabulous weekend.
Take care.
See ya later.